Check out the Full Press Hockey Podcast with Jim Biringer, the best in the business. It's going to be great.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is Full Press Hockey's weekly NHL Rumors show. We've been off for a week. I'm your host, Jim Biringer, alongside David Calabretta. We are back again. Before we get going, shout out, happy birthday to my co-host. It's going to happen tomorrow. Big day for him. But we're back again. David, welcome back.
Thank you so much, boys. I'm happy to be back.
Yeah, it's been the Rumor Boys here at Full Press Hockey, been nailing a lot of stuff recently. We've been killing it. You guys should be paying attention. Real quick, I want to get your thoughts. It wasn't on a rundown, but last week, when we were on our break, you were busy. I was busy. I did an appearance on a Jamie and Locker show, and I wrote stuff. The name Brady Tkachuk, it came up during the Ranger talks, when Trouba got moved. I wrote an article, did some things. He's not going anywhere. As much as anybody would like the player, he isn't available. He isn't going anywhere. And I think people need to realize that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when someone of that caliber of Brady Tkachuk is available, I'm sure teams would want to call. But it's going to take a lot. It's going to depend on the player. A lot of pieces in and out. And he just holds too much value to the Senators organization that a step backwards happens if they trade Brady Tkachuk more than anything.
Right, and they want to go forward, right? They want to go forward. They want to make the play. And they're on a nice little run right now, the Senators are. And Olmark's playing in the Vezina form. They're buying in. And look, everybody would want that type of player. I think it's two different situations, as I've been saying. Matthew in Calgary was different than Brady is in Ottawa, and he is the heart and soul of that team. And if you take him off that Senators team, I just don't think they are who they are. And I think even though he's got 3 years left, I could see him extending even more because I think this team is ready to take the next step.
Yeah, and he's kind of already signed. Like you said, he has a contract. He's signed. He's not an RFA like Matthew Tkachuk was, and he's also captain of Ottawa. Like back in Calgary, there was Goudreau, there was Lindholm. A lot of other pieces along with him. And I think Ottawa don't want to make the mistake Calgary did. You lose a Tkachuk brother, goes on to win a Stanley Cup, and he's a crucial piece to that team, to that Panthers team. And you saw it live. So
yeah, no, he was huge. I mean, even the first year he was in, right, they talk about trades and they talk about players taking time to adjust, right? And he didn't take time to adjust. Meanwhile, the guys that went back to Calgary did take time to adjust.
They still are.
Yeah, they still are adjusting, right? I think Wayer's adjusted more than Jonathan Huberdeau, but Huberdeau's finally come around. But if you say you did that, it's going to cost you a lot. Ottawa is ready to take that next step. I think they get that out of the way. They put out the fire, and it seems ever since they put out that fire, they've been playing a lot better. So good on the Senators because they really need it. They're one of those teams this year, as we've said, that need to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and unlike the Senators, when there was smoke and they came to play down the border in New York, the total opposite. Jim.
Yeah, well, there's two total opposites down across the border. We could start in Buffalo or we could start in the major city because neither thing is working out, right? Where there's smoke, there's a lot more fire. And I think let's start in Buffalo because Buffalo is playing the Montreal Canadiens on Tuesday night. They have a player that teams are interested in, but they have yet to make a comment on whether this player is not available or is not available. And that player is Dylan Cozens. He's got, I believe, like a $7 million cap hit for another
6 more years.
Like 6 more years. That's a very reasonable cap hit for a guy that's 23 years old. Teams like the Calgary Flames, Nashville Predators, go down the list of teams that need a center, could use him. Oh, by the way, the Buffalo Sabres could use him too because he's a good player. But they have yet to put out that fire. They have yet to put out any other fire surrounding their players like Bo Byram. Right? You mentioned it before. Like Byram could have gone out to Anaheim as part of a Zegras deal. Unfortunately, Zegras is hurt. And we'll get to Cam Fowler in a minute. But the mistakes keep piling up for the Buffalo Sabres. And when is too much enough for Terry Pegula to say, all right, I give up. I don't know what to do anymore.
Yeah, and going back to Dylan Cozens, I mean, there's not much, usually teams are going to dismiss rumors, right? And they haven't really dismissed any rumors on Dylan Cozens that they're trying to deal him. Look, I'm not saying they're going to trade him in the next few weeks, but they're open for business with practically anyone on this roster other than Rasmus Dahlin and Tage Thompson. So when you're a team that needs to make the playoffs and you're just on a 10-game losing streak, like something has to happen. And obviously today Terry Pegula met in Montreal with the team, and he also said no big player is going to be traded yet. It's all within the room. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's an in-room problem, or they need to go out and get some exterior help?
I think it's a cultural problem there. I mean, 14 years it's going to be when they don't make the playoffs this year. And I said it at the beginning of the season. I said it when the coaching hire happened. I didn't think Lindy Ruff was the guy for this team. The quotes I heard, he's like, I've been coaching. This is the toughest problem I need to solve. Like, these are quotes I heard last year when he was coaching the New Jersey Devils. And everybody's like, oh, well, he had a 112-point team. Yeah, the players on that team. You know who he had on his coaching staff. Like, there are a lot of things that were different on this team on New Jersey than there is in Buffalo. They have accepted losing, and they've made losing okay in the Buffalo Sabres locker room. How many guys can we go down the list? And it's not all Kevin Adams. There have been other general managers in there, Botterill, the list goes on, of guys that have just done things and have gotten rid of players. Let's go. We talk about Tkachuk's moving out winning Stanley Cups. Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart is a guy. Casey Middlestad's out there. Like, I mean, these are guys we've moved out. And what have they done? Nothing. Is Owen Power a bust? No, but he's not the guy that they signed to an 8-year contract extension. Tia Samuelson got. They gave long-term extensions to all these kids that had not yet to prove anything. Unlike New Jersey, the Devils extended all those guys, like the Hughes, the Heishers, all those guys at the last year of their entry-level deal because you knew what they were going to be. Right now, you see what's coming in Buffalo. I just don't know where it's going to end because, look, to be honest, yeah, it's in the room, but you're going to move out another player like Cozens, and now what's that going to solve?
I don't know what it's going to solve, but at the end of the day, when things are bad, it's only going to get worse if nothing's getting better, right? So I think they have to react on something. But again, Buffalo's had talent before, and they still have talent. Tage Thompson's got 100 points under his belt. Well, 99 to be exact. Rasmus Dahlin, elite defenseman. They traded Jack Eichel. They traded Sam Reinhart. And now they're just their best players on their team. So I don't know. I think you're right. It is a culture problem because they're making sure losing is okay. And there's also a victim mentality with the GM. The other day, he said, we don't have palm trees, so no one wants to come here. That's not something you say to a team that can't really get much free agents either. You have to make this place. You have to make a culture that players want to come. Montreal, a few years ago, no one wanted to come here. We missed out on Duchesne, Tavares, despite meeting them and trying to get them. And now it's just a young culture, and players have said it publicly, whether it's them or their representative, that they like what's going on in Montreal, and it's a place they could see themselves going in the future. So a culture shift is needed in Buffalo, and it starts with the GM and owner.
No, exactly. And that's what happened with Tom Fitzgerald in New Jersey. He changed the culture, right? Guys didn't want to come to New Jersey. Free agents didn't want to come to New Jersey. Yeah, okay. It changed when they got Dougie Hamilton, but even then, they still had to move guys there, right? Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier didn't just, these are the guys we want to play with. No, you had to see improvement from the New Jersey Devils. And I don't want to hear the excuse that they couldn't sign free agents because of Buffalo. Buffalo's a good hockey city. I remember Ville Leno got a bad contract by the Buffalo Sabres. He just didn't turn out the way they thought. Ryan O'Reilly was there. Robin Leonard was there. They had good players there, and they didn't win, especially when it was during the Jack Eichel and Sam Reinhart days. They had good players, and they got mentally fatigued. And the worst thing is the Buffalo Sabres handled the Jack Eichel situation so poorly that if they had just allowed him to go see his own doctors and get this, maybe Jack Eichel is still a Buffalo Sabre. Maybe they've turned this thing around already. Maybe he's not in Vegas. Maybe he didn't win a cup yet. We'll never know because it was just handled so poorly.
Yeah, and I just think of a Buffalo Sabres team to this day with Eichel, Reinhart, Thompson, Tuck, Cozens. Like, that's Middlestad. That's a legit top six. And
yeah.
And like Buffalo realistically lost 2 100-point players because their players were fed up of losing. And if that didn't flip the switch 2 years ago, well, it's showing now. And now when it's that time to win, suddenly nothing's clicking.
I know. It's crazy. And look, I said it last year during the offseason. I said, I don't understand why they're riding with Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and Devin Levi. Why didn't they bring a veteran goalie in there to cover some of the mistakes, just to get that save? Because it seems like once the one goal goes in, it just snowballs. You see it with young teams all the time. They just can't turn it around. You see it in Montreal, but again, Montreal's different because they're like on the cusp of where Buffalo needs to be. But it feels like Montreal's ready to go. Like when they start to click, they're going to click, and nobody wants to play the Montreal Canadiens. They're going to be that it team in the Atlantic Division that they're like, okay, Montreal's coming. We know they're coming. When they get it together, look out, because they're not going to be Buffalo.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time for Montreal, right? So
yeah,
when we talk about Buffalo, you're trying to make the playoffs, and your tandem is Devon Levy and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who don't even have probably 100 starts combined.
Not good enough.
Not good and not smart.
No, not smart. So I don't know what other changes are going to be made. Lindy Ruff's not going to get fired because this is not on the coach. I think Kevin Adams better watch his job, though, because I think the nail in the coffin is what he said about the palm trees. I think that was it. And if this doesn't turn around and this becomes 11, 12 games, I think there's going to be a new GM.
Yeah, and I'd say tomorrow is a huge game for them. Owners in town, and even Montreal need a win. So kind of unlucky to run into a defeated Sabres team. But I'm sure they got some juice this morning when they had the chat. And they really, in the locker room, they're like, okay, tomorrow night, we need those 2 points or else a lot of faces could be gone by Wednesday.
Yeah, because look, this team has stepped back. They've regressed. They were kind of being there, and now they're not there. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. What's also going to be interesting to see what happens is the New York Rangers, right? They move out Jacob Trouba. They move him to Anaheim. They didn't really get much of a return. Drury Vakanainen was the return and a pick. But Chris Drury, ever since that memo went out, the Rangers are 3-7-2. Like they're awful. They have not played well. They got blown out and embarrassed on home ice against the Los Angeles Kings. They barely beat the Buffalo Sabres. They lost to a bad Blackhawks team. This team is not good. It feels like, again, it's a culture problem. It's an issue inside that room. It starts upstairs too. And if you're going to pin this on Peter Laviolette, then the GM should be looking for his job too.
Yeah, and I think it's a situation that's not going to get better in New York because players have admitted they don't want to go there anymore. Like, it's not that hot spot anymore that they want to go there to win because in the end, no one's safe in that organization after what they've done with Trouba and Goodrow. So at the end of the day, the Rangers have to figure it out internally because externally, there's little to no interest in heading to the Rangers, especially now. They're a dumpster fire.
No, complete dumpster fire. And as has been reported, they're open for business. They've been open for business with Kreider and Trouba. They moved out Trouba. It seems like Capo Caco's name is out there still. He's probably going to get moved. It was a very surprise to see him scratch against St. Louis. I think he's been one of their better players this season, and especially during this recent slide. Mika Zibanejad's name is starting to circulate. Yes, he has a full no-move clause, but guess what? That doesn't mean anything. You can move players with no-move clauses. Chris Kreider's still out there. Ryan Lindgren's name is now appearing out there. They have pieces that teams will probably want. There's going to be some untouchables. Looking through some of these contracts, I did notice that like Lafreniere's no trade clause doesn't kick in for another couple of years. Adam Fox's no move clause doesn't kick in for another year. It starts at the summer of this year, 2025, 2026. Yeah. It's just interesting to see how some of these structured deals are done. I don't think those players are going anywhere, even though like everybody says that like everybody's available outside of certain players. I just don't think they would move a guy like Lafreniere, who's really performed well with Trocheck and Panarin. I think that's one of your core pieces moving forward. You just locked them up to a 7-year deal. If you really didn't think he was going to be a part of their team, I think they would have probably traded him already, no?
Yeah. And another thing is, even though they should be trading some of their big dogs, the likely odd man out in the next few days is going to be Capo Caco. And I'm going to watch out for teams like Pittsburgh Montreal, and Calgary on them. That's what I've been hearing. A young piece who's been good for New York this year. He's been one of the positives along with Will Cooley and Lafreniere as well. But like I said, New York have to really focus on the guys that are making the big bucks, because by trading Capo Caco, I'm sorry, but it's not going to move the needle.
No, it's not. And we've known he's been available for 2 years. That's why I took the $2.4 million deal that he got in the summer, right? He just signed his qualifying offer at that, and he's just like, okay, I know this is my last year in New York, and that's it. Kreider's got to step up his game. Zibanejad's got to step up his game. The issue is if you're going to move out to Zibanejad at $8.5 million, somebody's going to have to take it on. Where do they go, right? Like, I've heard that the Rangers and Ducks are going to circle back potentially for Toronto, because that was just the fit. But if you're out of it and you're not in the playoffs, are you going to do it? Like, is that something you're really going to do? And like I said, as much as you want to blame Peter Laviolette, and there have been a lot of games this season and recently that would get a coach fired. We saw it in Boston. If the coach goes, the GM has to be on the hot seat, because he cannot hire another coach. He went through Gallant. He went through Laviolette. Now this is on the players. And I think that's why they haven't pulled the trigger yet on Laviolette.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you pull the coach, you pull everyone.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, Laviolette could only do so much when the locker room's already beat down. And it's horrible timing, because Philly's getting hot, Ottawa's getting hot, teams are going to start climbing in. Pittsburgh are not too far off. And, there's one wild card spot left realistically in this in the conference. So the Rangers are falling. And
fast.
It's the worst time, because there's teams getting hot, like I said, the Senators and the Flyers. So if there's something that has to happen, it has to be now, because if you go down 10 more games and they play 500 hockey, it won't even be enough.
Right, and the Islanders are kicking right there. They survived their injuries to their players. Now, granted, they lost the late second game to the Chicago Blackhawks, but I think they're within striking distance.
Yeah.
Like, they're right there too. And so again, GM, coach, players, like, everything seems to be on the table. And how do you feel about this before we wrap up with the Rangers? If you're a GM and you're looking to move out players, do you want teams to come to you with ideas, or do you should be going to teams with ideas? Because the more I think about it, it's like, if he needs teams to call him, Drury that is, that tells me he doesn't know what he's doing as a general manager.
No, you have to be the calling. If you're going to be sending memos out, you have to start inquiring what I could get for this type of player. And I'll be honest, no one's calling. No one's going to call for Mika Zibanejad right now.
No.
You're going to have to do the calling here. And he might lose the trade in theory, but at the end of the day, I don't know how many times I have to say it, but this room is beat up.
Right. There's a mutiny in this room. I as we like to say, soft tampering, I think there's a soft mutiny.
Yeah. And, if you look at their interviews, like post-game, and it's just the little things, they're always interviewing Adam Fox, Alexis Lafreniere, and Will Cooley, arguably the three guys who haven't really been part of the problem.
No.
So clearly there's something going on here. Like, okay, we're not going to talk to Chris Kreider, Mika Zibanejad, all these guys in trade rumors, because you already know what the questions are going to be asked.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a never-ending cycle all season in New York until something gets addressed. And let's say they move Capo Caco by the end of this week. There's still going to be questions on their main guys. So
yeah, exactly.
New York's priorities aren't straight right now. And
no, they're not.
And they're going to fall.
Right, and the trade freeze is what, the 23rd? Like, so if you're going to move Caco, that's a deal you can do. But like we saw, Anaheim was able to move out Cam Fowler over the weekend to St. Louis Blues. That's a good trade for them. I like the prospect and the pick coming back to Anaheim. Obviously, that Fowler became expendable when the Trouba trade happened. So, but I like that because we knew Anaheim has a lot of pieces, right? We knew Fowler going to St. Louis. That makes sense. Again, Frank Vatrano's still there. You have Robbie Fabry, John Gibson. But the thing is with Gibson now is, if you look at Anaheim, where does he go, right? Like, because it seems like Tokarski, Spencer, and Kochetkov could kind of get it done in Carolina if they play D. Blackwood went to Colorado. There's not a lot of landing spots now for Gibson.
Too late, Jim. Too late. Because Anaheim had all summer. They had all Thanksgiving break. They had all this time to move a goalie. Look, you saw Markstrom change address. Allmark. Colorado addressed their situation. Vancouver went to go get someone to replace Demko over the last few months. And now, like you said, Carolina, they'll be fine. I don't think they're really going to address Gibson as a need right now. So it's going to have to be, a team that loses their star goalie for long term. I guess it's something like that needs to happen for Gibson to get moved.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's something because, again, like the Colorado situation, like I like Blackwood again. First game, he gave up a couple of goals late that were, typical goals, right? Wedgwood, we'll see what that combination does. Again, they revamped their goaltending in 3 months. That was incredible, what they did there, because Georgiev and the company weren't going to get it done. And I think it might be guys like Georgiev or Vanacek that if Carolina really wants something, those might be the guys in San Jose that they target. Not a guy like Gibson where you're adding $6.5 million or less to your payroll for a couple of more seasons. Like I think if Freddie Anderson comes back, Kachekov's the guy there in Carolina. I just don't see that kind of goalie being moved to Carolina.
Yeah, and look, I don't know if like you're watching the game, as a viewer, I see it. I don't know how the upper management doesn't see it, but Lucas Dostal looks like a number one. He's playing amazing hockey. So I don't know how that wasn't made known that Gibson could have been moved by now.
Well, because he has his no move clause, no trade clause. Did he really want to leave Anaheim?
I think he does. I think he's willing to, because if Cam Fowler's willing to. And look, Gibson hasn't played playoff hockey in years.
Like, 8 years, something like that?
8 years now. So I'm sure you're at this point in your career, you want to go to a playoff team and you'll arguably be a number one wherever you go. Because let's be honest, Gibson's still a great goalie.
Yeah, he is. He's just in a bad situation with a team that just can't play defense.
Yeah, and the Ducks have a great tandem if they want to keep Gibson, but I don't see a use if they're not really making the playoffs.
No, I agree. And people still don't know what Pat Verbeek's doing over there because of the moves that he's making, the people that come in and out, and the playing time. And I think still that's a coach that you can watch. On the flip side of it, St. Louis, they had Fowler. That's a good depth piece. Brandon Saad's name seems to be out there now. He was in and out of the lineup recently. That's a scorer that a team could use come deadline time.
Yeah, and I think, if they eat up a bit of his salary, he could be an enticing piece. Last season got 26 goals on a non-playoff team, the St. Louis Blues. And I look at it and I say, he kind of makes sense for the Devils.
Right?
As a left wing shooting threat, I mean, he's not the smallest. He's like 6'1". So,
that's a good fit. That's a good. They need another scorer. That's what they need. They need another scorer.
Yeah, not just the Devils. I mean, there's so many options out there for contending teams that, a 25 goal scorer at retained salary at $2.2 million.
Yeah, that anybody would want that.
That's enticing. So even at the 4.5 cap hit, I think St. Louis could probably get a late draft pick. But if they want to eat up his salary, there could be some teams bidding for him.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I think that's a great fit. I think New Jersey could go stay out at maybe LA could use a guy like that, if they really wanted it, if they needed it. This would throw heads would probably spin, but, if St. Louis did retain, $2 million up at Toronto, that's not a bad player who played under, Craig Berube.
Yeah, and there's injuries going on in Toronto. So, I mean, it makes sense.
It definitely does. Before we wrap up, there was, we heard it this morning, Elliot Friedman spitballing, but he did confirm on the Donnie and Dolly show that he does believe Vancouver and Buffalo have been talking. He does not think it was about Elias Pettersson, about, was it Cozens and Byram for Pettersson, but he does believe those teams have talked. It'd be interesting because Elias Pettersson just signed a new contract extension. But we've heard the comments by Rick Tocchet over the weekend and Jim Rutherford. They're noticing that this team just doesn't play the right way anymore. We know how, red circle, red eye, whatever you want, the bullseye that's on Elias Pettersson's back. He's not a controversial figure there in Vancouver, but he is really good and then he's really bad and there's really no in-between. And if they did move him, that would be a shocking move because I thought he was part of their core. But if they do move him out, does that mean Brock Besser stays?
Yeah, I mean, Best was another one of their priorities, get him signed. But I think Vancouver's gonna soon enough, unless they don't figure it out, have to decide: are we keeping Pettersson or JT Miller? Because it's been confirmed already, but I know they butt heads. They're not really they've gotten into altercations before, Miller and Pettersson. So I mean, I'd rather give up Miller just because he's a bit older, because what Pettersson could bring to a team. But I do know that Vancouver could get themselves a haul if they put Pettersson out there, and he's been out there already. So I think, they have to figure it out between them. You can't have your core players butting heads, especially when you're trying to compete for a cup, because the Canucks are one of the contenders in the West. So they're going to kind of have to see. I don't think he's really on the trade block, but it's something that maybe a meeting needs to be done to figure out, okay, what's going on with you two.
Right. I agree with that. And then again, if you move out, say you did this hypothetically, right? Say you moved out Pettersson, Cozens for Cozens and Byram. I mean, yes, Byram is liked by the Canucks. Okay, that's great. I think they took a step back down the middle, though.
That's underwhelming. It's an underwhelming return.
Right, it is.
That would be a trade, like hypothetically.
Yeah, it's an underwhelming return because I think you need more for that. Yeah, Cozens could fill in the role of Pettersson, but I don't know if Cozens the player of Pettersson's ilk. And I think you need a first-round draft pick in there. I think you need another player in there. They might go after, say, a Peyton Krebs or a JJ Peterka or a Jack Quinn could be a part of that as well. So it would definitely just be like the 1 for 2 would definitely be underwhelming without other stuff around it. Do I see it happening? I don't think so. I could definitely see Vancouver calling to Buffalo about Bo Byram, though.
Yeah, for sure. I think, honestly, they need to address their right-hand side, if anything.
Yep.
Because, Byram came out today. He wants to be a number one defenseman elsewhere. And I'm looking at teams, and I'm like, I don't see a world where you're a number one in many teams in the National Hockey League.
No.
And, it reminds me a bit of Chikrin's situation in Arizona. He kind of wanted to get out of there. But at the end of the day, Byram, he hasn't proved much to earn that title. And I don't think he'd get a return of what a number one defenseman would get on the market. And then going to Pettersson, I think Buffalo have the pieces to probably get a trade done, but so do a lot of other teams in the NHL. And I'm curious to see if they fail again to really go far in the playoffs, if he's out there in the summer. And if there's teams with young pieces, high draft picks, I always mean to put on Montreal, but why not, right? Like,
why not? I mean, they need a center. They do need a center.
And if they don't pick top 5, let's say they pick 8th overall, hypothetically, you could involve that in a deal with add who else? Add Reinbacher, add Kirby Dach.
Yeah, that'd be something. It would be something for sure to see if that were to happen. But we're wrapping up here. Full Press Hockey, our weekly NHL Rumors segment. We're back here before the holiday freeze. My name is Jim Biringer. That's David Calabretta. Get it up on YouTube. Please subscribe to the channel. Like the video. Also, check us out at Full Press NHL on Twitter and everywhere where you get your podcasts. Guys, take care and enjoy the holidays.
Happy holidays, guys.
Barry Trotz, Nashville Predators, making sure you're listening to Full Press Hockey Podcast.